But now let's bring in Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell and Ben English, the editor of the Daily Telegraph. Welcome, gents. Andrew, first to you. Never has a debate really been so important given Dutton's falling fortunes. How do you see how tonight went?
Well, I thought Peter Dutton was a clear winner, and I think that was pretty meritorious given the situation with his father. I've got to say, though, that coming into the debate, I did predict this. He had a lot to work with on the cost of living front, and there were a couple of good hits from Peter Dutton on the Prime Minister. There was one or two decent hits on the other side. So, for example, he was ready for the Medicare card stump, wasn't he? That was clear. They'd planned it. All right, well, do you use your Medicare card and your credit card? So what's all this about? That was a good hit. But then Albanese says, well, hang on. When you were health minister, you tried to put a $7 fee, which I'd briefly forgotten about. Of course, I know that.
Yes.
During that 2014 budget. It was that 2014 budget they didn't really explain that was coming back to sort of haunt the opposition leader a bit, just like Scott Morrison last time tried to haunt Anthony Albanese with some of the misdeeds of the Labor government. But generally, I think Peter Dutton, I think it's probably the best performance I've ever seen from Peter Dutton, to be quite frank with you, Shari.
That's a big call. Certainly the best performance this campaign.
I think it is the best performance I've seen from Peter Dutton, and he needed it for his campaign. And from what occurred in terms of his father, that, as I say, that was all the more meritorious. The only concern for the coalition, Shari, is those undecided voters' questions all went to areas of strength. A lot of them went to areas of strength for the government, right? So a lot of them were on health, which the government is prosecuting, and there was a question on Donald Trump, and that shows why Peter Dutton has the job ahead of him.
Yeah, exactly. Ben English, bringing you in now. What were the key takeouts for you? And I want to specifically as well ask you about that question from the driver, the undecided voter who's a driver, who said, well, this petrol tax cut just makes sense.
Yeah, I thought that was a great moment for Dutton. Actually, it was the first pro-coalition question that came about. The first three were very much in Albanese's camp, and we're starting to wonder about the composition of the undecided voters. But
of your own forum, Ben.
Of my own forum. There might be a few inquiries, but with the fellow who was the driver owner, that was right in his wheelhouse, and Dutton leaned into it, and it was probably an uncomfortable moment for Albanese, because what it highlighted was that Dutton's offering immediate relief, and it's relief that courses through the economy. And I thought Dutton was very good at explaining that. I don't think he has properly up until now, but he actually crystallised it. Not only is it actually for you at the petrol pump, but it's also for the farmers. It's for the businesses, and it actually is an anti-inflationary device. So very effective.
He was just a lot clearer, on stuff like the budget situation than he has been in any press conference. You can see it in the campaign when you're on the bus with him, Shari. He's untrained at 20 journalists throwing him a question. But he prepared assiduously for this, and you could see it in his performance.
And I think we've seen that in the first week or so of the campaign, that the Prime Minister this is not his first campaign. He's done this before. He's more experienced, he's more polished. I hate to say it, but he probably has a better Labor outfit behind him as well. The messages are clearer. We've been lacking some of those sharp messages from Peter Dutton, messages that really cut through to voters like Tony Abbott has used in the past.
I think that's right, and I think the budget one's a big one, because he for the first time really explained why he couldn't do the tax cuts. Up until now, it's sort of why aren't you doing these? Or you said you're about lower taxes, so why aren't you providing a lower tax policy? But he was really able to frame that debt and deficit situation that Australia's in.
And there was a moment tonight, Ben, where Kieran Gilbert asked the audience to put up their hands, and he said, tell me, who here is struggling with the cost of living? I mean, it was a majority of the room put their hand up. We're in the heart of Western Sydney here. This is a marginal seat, typical of mainstream Australian voters, really. So Ben Dutton addressed that. He sought to use the fact, look at the history of the past 3 years, and he said to people, this is reflective of broader Australia, and people are doing it tough. And this is where he's trying to focus the campaign. We all thought it would be a lot easier for him because cost of living has been such a major issue.
I think this is one of the key successes of tonight for Peter Dutton is that he actually humanised the cost of living issue. So, as you said, he leveraged off the grim picture of all those hands going up and actually was successfully turned that into a narrative about the human misery that has been wrought, in his words, by this Albanese government. So, in that sense, I think he started to build his narrative. I felt like his press conference today, he started to refine it as well. It's like he's starting to get match fit. And if you could reduce the mission for Peter Dutton tonight, it was to reset and to reframe it. Because up until now, it's all been framed by Labor. Tonight, I feel like there's been a reframing.
Yeah. And Ben, I want to ask as well if you agree with Clennell that Dutton won the debate.
Yeah, I think he did. I think you expect the opposition leader to win debates. I mean, let's not forget, I think Albanese probably won the 3 last time and Morrison the 3 before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he won it. He was clear, he was focused, and he was across the detail. Mind you, Albanese was across the detail too, and he had a couple of zingers there, but Dutton showed that he was serious.
One thing we haven't spoken about yet, Andrew, is the little tiff around education as well. Another area that is naturally a strength for Labor.
Yeah, it is. And the thing that the government at the time, the Abbott government, I don't think defined enough was that Julia Gillard really mined the villages for them, right? So he was trying to point out the original plan had education spending and health spending sliding way up, so we had to pare it back. Whereas the state government then came out and said, you're cutting everything. So he was able to explain that pretty well and try and get on top of that issue. And another thing I think was really significant is there were arguments on both sides of the migration argument.
Yeah.
This seat, heavily multicultural, a lot of the marginals are, and I felt it interesting. I found this door knocking with Andrew Charlton yesterday. There were people on either side of the debate. There were people who say you've let too many people in too quickly, and there are people saying to Peter Dutton, oh, you're going to be mean to migrants, and that's the difficulty for him during this campaign.
Really tough balancing act, and we did see questions that went to both of those things tonight. Ben Dutton spoke about immigration, linking it to housing affordability and the housing supply, which of course is as well a critical issue.
Yeah, absolutely critical that he did that, and that was speaking to all of Australia, not just Western Sydney, particularly those fringe electorates as well, as we were talking about earlier. But it is interesting, isn't it, how the electorate has changed. I think we were here in 2013, and it would have been a very different set of questions about migration then to what we're seeing today.
Yep. All right. Andrew Clennell, Ben English, great to have your insights. Really appreciate your time.